Well, hello everybody. Welcome to whatever I've named this page. I think it's Intellectually Speaking. My name is Robert, and it's been a while since I've done one of these videos. I'm heading back to Waco from DFW Airport, where this is my second time up here today. I was not expecting to have a day like this. But on my way back, after my first trip, I felt the need to hurry up and get back to Waco. Something inside me says, Robert, you're going to have another DFW trip. As soon as I got back to Waco, and the moment I logged on seconds later, I got another trip request, and I'm believing to have more tomorrow. But what I want to talk about today is something that I've been debating on and struggling with, because if you've watched past videos of mine, I used to be a Christian. Now I'd get on here and talk about scriptures and verses and blah, 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 blah. Well, over the last year and a half, prior to me going back to practicing what I did before I did that, it had been a struggle. It had been a struggle in every way stinking possible. I was never truly blessed. Barely making enough to pay the bills with cents, if just a couple dollars on my account each and every time. I never felt like I belonged in that faith. Not one time. Oftentimes enough, I would make comments that I felt like I was being held back. That there was a hand preventing me from succeeding. My prayers, I don't think ever got heard. In fact, oftentimes enough, I felt that was about as far as they left my mouth. And I struggled. And being a gay man, I had to deny who I was because of what the Bible says, written by men. But since I came back to practicing witchcraft again, my world has been turning back around. See, I never had the financial hardships like I did whenever I started practicing Christianity again. Money was always there. I always had excess. I never had to worry about paying my bills because I knew the universe, I knew that the goddess and the horn god would be there, would answer but not only that my magic was strong. But see, oftentimes enough over that year and a half, I kept thinking that I was hearing from God and that, don't worry about it, Robert, everything's going to be fine. Don't worry about the rent. I'd earnestly pray for rent. Nothing. Struggled with it subsequently. Now I'm facing severe issues. Kept not worrying about it until there was something to worry about. But then I decided to start burning my incense again, lighting candles, doing my incantations, picking up my wand, and the money started to flow again. Cleansing myself in the evenings whenever I'm done on the roads. Doing my morning magic for abundance and prosperity. And knowing that the energies around me were being used to manifest. See, to understand magic, all it is in the physical law of attraction, meaning you're using candles, crystals, incantations, herbs. I got to start collecting herbs again. And you're manifesting that into your life. Things happen. And in fact, a couple months ago, I talked to my ex-husband. I had put a curse on him. A couple years ago, well, subsequently I found out that he lost his job, was forced to move to Houston, and also lost the trailer that he got someone to help him with to leave me. Because apparently he's been struggling for the past few years. But see, that's what happens when you start fucking with a witch. And excuse the language. This won't be for children. When you start screwing with people and they know how to use magic, get ready. Just like with my landlord and her son. Casting magic against them, binding them. Binding spells is probably one of the greatest tools a witch has at their disposal. As long as the incantation is true with true intent. People will say, well, you shouldn't do that. Then, that falls back on you. Not if you do it right. And what's the fun of being a witch if you can't curse people, if you can't hex people, if you can't cross people or jinx them? What's the point? It's no fun at that point. But over time, I started noticing, I'm like, something's not right. Something isn't right. Something's not adding up. I don't know what it is. I'm praying and praying and praying, and the opposite's happening. My bills are barely getting paid. I'm constantly broke. And I always felt like after I paid a bill that I was being punished. And I'm not talking about Satan in any of this either. And then it would take me a week, 2 weeks to get caught back up again. And by that point, I'm already falling behind again. I'm robbing Peter to pay Paul. Struggling and struggling and struggling. See, this is why I say that Christianity is for rich people. They don't have to pray about money. They don't have to worry about the things that poor people have to worry about, like paying bills. Addictions of every kind. They've already got everything that they need. So therefore, they ain't got to pray for it. But poor people continuously give money to the church in tithing and offerings. And they can't even pay their damn bills, believing that they're going to get a breakthrough in their finances. Because this is what these men of God, if you will, stand up on these pulpits and preach to get them to squeeze out more money so that they can live in their multi-million-dollar homes, have book deals, drive fancy cars, wear Armani suits, and eat at 5-star restaurants. While the poor is getting poorer. But the rich inside these churches that own companies are making their money off the poor. And it's a never-ending cycle. But something was never adding up. I never felt comfortable being a Christian, and I never felt comfortable talking about it. Practicing witchcraft, I feel comfortable and I feel in my own skin, and I'm not afraid to hide who I am as a person. It just never felt right. Ever. But then the election comes, coming up on, the election comes. Trump gets elected again by all these far-right conservative Christians. And how does that look to people that are struggling with faith in the first place? They might as well figure it out on their own at this point. Because if people like that can get into power and be allowed to prosper, then the rest of us, they can't get prayers answered, they can't get needs met. What does that say? So, I went back to practicing my witchcraft. And I have no qualms about doing it either. None. Sometimes I just think it was a trap. Because something else that I noticed too, I decided to go back to school. And it was a struggle just for that to happen. But I look back over my life, and things happened to get me back into Texas. I was doing fine in Illinois. I was fine out in California. But things systematically happened to drive me back to Texas, where I've been miserable ever since then. And the moment that I said I need out of this freaking state, that's when all hell started to break loose. Whenever I started getting a vision of a bigger picture, and there's only one God that knew at that point, things started to clamp down. Like me, thinking I could sew, crochet, whatever. But then I started doing data analytics on my computer, keeping track of my earnings with Uber and Lyft, and noticing things. And I'm like, I'm actually really good at this. But then I kept noticing other distractions that were taking place, trying to keep me from focusing in. I ended up having to drop 4 classes, and I stayed with web programming. And it all didn't make sense until the final. Then it all made sense to me. It all clicked like that. I'm like, you know what? I can actually do really well at this. It makes sense now. It all makes sense. But a higher power's been fighting me tooth and nail, trying to keep me in Texas. I'm leaving this state one way or another. This is not my home. I don't like the people here. The politics stink. I need to be around people like me, where I can make friends. I'm tired of being alone. I've had it. And that was one of the decisions that made me decide to go back to school. When you get sick and tired of being sick and tired, when you get truly fed up and you're done, you take matters into your own hands. And that's whenever I started practicing my witchcraft again. That's whenever I said, you know what, I'm done. Prayers aren't getting answered. Things are getting worse. And things aren't making sense whatsoever. But once I came to that point, along with saying, you know what it is, what it is, and you know what, I'm done caring about it anymore, things started to change. Because at that point, I threw hope and faith out the window. Because I'd actually watched a video. It was on Criminal Minds, and they talked about hope. And it rang so true with me. Hope is a place that keeps you dead. You keep hoping that things are going to change, and they're not going to change. You have to make things happen yourself. Oftentimes you hear churches say, just hold on. Your prayers will get answered. No, they're not. No, they are not. They want you to keep putting money into that money tray. Things are not going to change until you pick yourself up and say, you know what, I'm done. I've had all I can take. I've been waiting and waiting and waiting, and nothing in my life is changing. There was many times I kept telling myself, you know what, there has to be more than this. There has to be. Something's got to give. Something has to change. But I kept waiting, and I kept hoping, and I kept praying, and I kept praying, and I kept praying. Nothing happened. I kept saying rideshare. I said, God, it's not blessing rideshare. Because I'd go out there miserable days. Last year, or actually the last year and a half, was the worst I've ever had doing this. The worst. The absolute worst. Because I put blind faith hoping, praying something was going to change, waiting for a breakthrough. Breakthroughs don't happen. Things happen for a purpose and for a reason. The universe has consistently blessed me through the power of my magic. Consistently. And I just got to the point I'm like, you know what? No, there's something going on here. And then I started thinking about it. And I'm like, you know what? There's only one that can do this. That has that kind of power. That knows my heart and my mind. And is trying to prevent it from happening. That's why I believe in multiple gods. And I have struggled with this message for months. But then I started asking questions. And I started remembering very specific scriptures. Like this little scripture that says, salvation is for the Gentile, but the promise goes to the Jew. What does that mean? It means Gentiles, if you go and if you look in the New Testament, oftentimes enough, who is the apostles talking to? The Jews. The Jews, and I'm not being anti-Semitic either. But for the poor, forget it. It's not for us. They gave up and they sold everything that they had to give to the church. And they ended up living in caves and under rocks and in the forests. For what? But they like to talk about the Old Testament. That's where they get a lot of their preaching from, with transfer of wealth and this and that and things that don't even line up with Scripture. To make people feel good. And I fell for it. I wish I had the $5,000 back that I tithed last year. Maybe my situation wouldn't have been so bad. Sending money in. Believing my finances were going to get turned around and I was going to be blessed. Being cursed at both jobs. I probably would have still been at Caterpillar, but I was a Christian and I put on this pious attitude and people didn't like me as a result of it. That's not the first time. Whenever I'm me, I'm a funny, hilarious person. Because I just don't give a crap. But I look down my nose at people because I thought I was special. I thought I was one of the chosen ones. No. Not at all. And I know there's a lot more people out there that feel the exact same way I do. Because something does not make sense at all. And I don't know what it is. But twice in my life, I tried Christianity. The first time, I was 6 years with my family. And we struggled and struggled and struggled and struggled and struggled. Struggling to pay bills. But we're tithing to that church faithfully. Could barely pay the bills. Couldn't enjoy anything whatsoever. And if I had to work, I had to leave my family. What kind of crap is that? Being alone for months. And then eventually I'd come to my sexuality. So But it wasn't until I found witchcraft that my life started to turn around. Subsequently, that was one of the things of why my husband left me. Because he's a Christian, I guess. Baptist. Didn't like it, among other things. But that's when my life started to turn around. Burning incense and herbs and spices, casting spells. I'm not advocating for what I believe in by any stretch of the imagination. But I'm here to say that the past, well, we'll say 2 years now, had been difficult, had been a struggle, has been a fight for my very life and to hold on to everything. You know, something else too, it just came to my mind. I don't know how many times I prayed for protection. And I still had to lock my car up behind the gate. But I got hit twice. Twice. The second time totaled it out. Still sitting in my driveway. But the second time, and then subsequently, the next day, I got this car. But I'm the one that had to do the research and had to sit in there making, you know, it's not a blessing if you got to make payments. It's a blessing if it's given to you. But I made the first payment, no problem. First month. Second month was a little more difficult. And then the third month, all hell started to break loose. Or might have been in fourth. Anyway, I'm a month behind. But I'm hoping to get it paid within the next few days, so I can get caught up. But then the issue started happening with my landlord. That voice that kept saying, "Don't worry about it, Robert. Everything's fine. You're doing just fine." Well, you doing just fine got me into the shit that I'm in now. You know, and something else too, it's like I'd go to the grocery store. I'd go buy stuff for vape. All right, and then I'd go to the grocery store. And this happened on more than one occasion. Spending to the dime everything I made that day. That does not just happen. You know, hearing this little voice, you need this, you need that, you need this, you need that. And subsequently being broke. And it consistently happened a lot whenever I was a Christian. Now this shit don't happen. So, I don't know. But yeah, this is my rant. But I can say now without a shadow of a doubt, I pay a bill, I have excess. I'm not freaking broke. I'm not worrying that much about my finances anymore, because days like today happen. I got back my entire insurance that I paid yesterday today. All of it. I paid my insurance and I still had $100 left over. Whenever I was a Christian, that never happened. Ever. I might have $12, $5, a few cents. It never happened the entire time. Ever. And it got harder and harder and harder to make my car payments. Couldn't pay rent. I could pay all my other bills, barely. But rent was the one thing. And I think that, and I truly believe that it was malicious intent. Malicious. To put me out on the streets. Again. Like 13 years ago. No, 12 years ago. Forcing me to come back to this freaking hellhole. So, if you're a Christian, more power to you. But for a lot of us, if you're poor, it's not for us. It is not for us at all. So thanks for watching. Leave your comments. And until next time, we'll see y'all later.